I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouth into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside a poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. How unusual to be living a life of continual self-expression, jotting down little things, noticing a leaf being carried down a stream, then wondering what will become of me. And finally to work along under a lamp as if everything depended on this, groping blindly down a page like someone lost in a forest. And to think it all began one night on the steps of a nunnery where I lay gazing up from a sewing basket which was doubling for a proper baby carrier, staring into the turbulent winter sky, too young to wonder about anything, including my recent abandonment. But it was there that I committed my first act of self-expression, sticking out my infant tongue and receiving in return, I can see it now, a large pristine snowflake much like any other. Even if it keeps you up all night, wash down the walls and scrub the floor of your study before composing a syllable. Clean the place as if the Pope were on his way. Spotlessness is the niece of inspiration. The more you clean, the more brilliant your writing will be. So do not hesitate to take to the open fields, to scour the undersides of rocks, or swab in a dark forest, upper branches, nests full of eggs. When you find your way back home and stow the sponges and brushes under the sink, you will behold in the light of dawn the immaculate altar of your desk, a clean surface in the middle of a clean world. From a small vase, sparkling blue, lift a yellow pencil, the sharpest of the bouquet, and cover pages with tiny sentences like long rows of devoted ants that followed you in from the woods. There is the sudden silence of the crowd above a player not moving on the field, and the silence of the orchid, the silence of the falling vase before it strikes the floor, the silence of the belt when it is not striking the child, the stillness of the cup and the water in it, the silence of the moon and the quiet of the day far from the roar of the sun, the silence when I hold you to my chest, the silence of the window above us, and the silence when you rise and turn away. And there's the silence of this morning, which I have broken with my pen, a silence that had piled up all night, like snow falling in the darkness of the house, the silence before I wrote the word, and the poorer silence now. The other day I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, bouncing from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I find myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word Lanyard. No cookies nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at the workbench at the camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them, but that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again, until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine on my lips, laid cold face cloth on my forehead, and then let me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim, and I in turn presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, And here is clothing and a good education. And here's your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is a lanyard I made at camp. And here I wish to say to her now is a smaller gift, not the archaic truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. Remember the 1340s? We were doing a dance called the catapult. You always wore brown, the color craze of the decade. And I was draped in one of those capes that were popular, the ones with unicorns and pomegranates in needlework. Everyone would pause for beer and onions in the afternoon, and at night we would play a game called Find a Cow. Everything was hand-lettered then, not like today. Where has the summer of 1572 gone? Brocade and sonnet marathons were the rage. We used to dress up in a flag of rival baronies and conquer one another in cold rooms of stone. Out on the dance floor, we were all doing the struggle, while your sister practiced the Daphne all alone in her room. We borrowed the jargon of farriers for our slang. These days language seems transparent, a badly broken code. The 1790s would never come again. Childhood was big. People would take walks to the very tops of hills and write down what they saw in their journals without speaking. Our colors were high and our hats were extremely soft. We would surprise each other with alphabets made of twigs. It was a wonderful time to be alive, or even dead. I am very fond of the period between 1815 and 1821. Europe trembled while we sat still for our portraits. And I would love to return to 1901, if only for a moment, time enough to wind up a music box and do a few dance steps, or shoot me back to 1922 or 1941, or at least let me recapture the serenity of last month when we picked berries and glided through afternoons in a canoe. Even this morning would be an improvement over the present. I was in the garden then, surrounded by the hum of bees and the Latin names of flowers, watching the early light flash off the slanted windows of the greenhouse and silver the limbs on the rows of dark hemlocks. As usual, I was thinking about the moments of the past, letting my memory rush over them like water rushing over the stones on the bottom of a stream. I was even thinking a little about the future, that place where people are doing a dance we cannot imagine, a dance whose name we can only guess. Why do we bother with the rest of the day, the swell of the afternoon, the sudden dip into evening? The night with his notorious perfumes, his many pointed stars. This is the best, throwing off the light covers, feet on the cold floor and buzzing around the house on espresso. Maybe a splash of water on the face, a palm full of vitamins, but mostly buzzing around the house on espresso. Dictionary and atlas open on the rug, the typewriter waiting for the key of the head, a cello on the radio. And if necessary, the windows. 3, 50, 100 years old out there, heavy clouds on the way, and the lawn steaming like a horse in the early morning. I never wished for a sibling, boy or girl, center of the universe. I had the back of my parents' car all to myself. I could look out one window, then slide over to the other window without any quibbling over territorial rights. And whenever I played a game on the floor of my bedroom, it was always my turn. Not until my parents entered their 90s did I long for a sister, a nurse I named Mary, who worked in a hospital 5 minutes away from their house and who would drop everything, even the thermometer whenever I called. Be there in a jiff and on my way were two of her favorite expressions and mine. And now that the parents are dead, I wish I could meet Mary for coffee every now and then at that Italian place with the blue awning, where we would sit and reminisce even on rainy days. I would gaze into her green eyes and see my parents, my mother looking out of Mary's right eye, and my father staring out of her left, which would remind me of what an odd duck I was a child, a little prince and a loner who would break off from his gang of friends on a Saturday and find a hedge to hide behind. And I would tell Mary about all that too, and never embarrass her by asking about her non-existence. And maybe we would have another espresso and pastry, and I would always pay the bill and walk her home. Trying to protect his students' innocence, he told them the Ice Age was really just a chilly age, a period of 1,000,000 years when everyone had to wear sweaters. And the Stone Age became the Gravel Age, named after the long driveway of the time. The Spanish Inquisition was nothing more than an outbreak of questions such as, how far is it from here to Madrid? What do you call the matador's hat? The War of Roses took place in a garden, and the Enola Gay dropped one tiny atom on Japan. The children would leave his classroom for the playground to torment the weak and the smart, mussing up their hair and breaking their glasses, while gathered up his notes and walked home past flower beds and white picket fences, wondering if they would believe that soldiers in the Boer War told long rambling stories designed to make the enemy nod off. This is the beginning. Almost anything can happen. This is where you find the creation of light, a fish wiggling onto land, the first word of paradise lost on an empty page. Think of an egg, the letter A woman ironing on the bare stage as the heavy curtain rises. This is the very beginning. The first person narrator introduces himself. Tell us about his lineage. The mezzo-soprano stands in the wings. Here the climbers are studying a map or pulling on their long woolen socks. This is early on, years before the arc, dawn. The profile of an animal is being smeared on the wall of a cave, and you have not yet learned to crawl. This is the opening, the gambit, a palm moving forward an inch. This is your first night with her, your first night without her, where the wheels begin to turn. This is the first part where the elevator begins its ascent before the doors lurch apart. This is the middle. Things have had time to get complicated, messy, really. Nothing is simple anymore. Cities have sprouted up along the rivers teeming with people at cross purposes. A million schemes, a million wild looks. Disappointment unshoulders his knapsack here and pitches his ragged tent. This is the sticky part where the plot congeals, where the action suddenly reverses or swerves off in an outrageous direction. Here the narrator devotes a long paragraph to why Miriam does not want Edward's child. Some hides a letter under a pillow. Here the area rises to a pitch, a song of betrayal, salted with revenge. And the climbing party is stuck on a ledge halfway up the mountain. This is the bridge, the painful modulation. This is the thick of things. So much is crowded in the middle. The guitars of Spain, piles of ripe avocados, Russian uniforms, noisy parties, lakeside kisses, arguments heard through a wall. Too much to name, too much to think about. And this is the end, the car running out of road, the river losing its name in an ocean, the long nose of the photographed horse touching the white electronic line. This is the colophon, the last elephant in a parade. the empty wheelchair, and pigeons floating down in the evening. Here the stage is littered with bodies. The narrator leads the characters to their cells, and the climbers are in their graves. It is me hitting the period, and you closing the book. It is Sylvia Plath in the kitchen, and Saint Clement with an anchor around his neck. This is the final bit thinning away to nothing. This is the end according to Aristotle, what we have all been waiting for, what everything comes down to, the destination we cannot help imagining, a streak of light in the sky, a hat on a peg, and outside the cabin, falling leaves. Just as in the horror movies, when someone discovers that the phone calls are coming from inside the house, so do I realize that our tender overlapping has been taking place only inside me. All that sweetness, the love and desire, it's just been me dialing myself, then following the ringing to another room, to find no one on the line. Well, sometimes a little breathing, but more often than not, nothing. To think that all this time, which would include the boat rides, the airport embraces, and all the drinks, it's been only me and the two telephones, the one on the wall in the kitchen, and the extension in the darkened guest room upstairs.